Chapter 11, Murder. Now in this chapter there are some adult themes, so it might be best if parents were to listen through first. The long desert journey to Egypt is still a blur to me. My memories are jumbled, and whenever I try to remember how long we walked or what route we took, I'm stuck. All that comes to mind are endless hot days with Yeshua on my back and the constant fear that Herod's men were going to catch us at any time, or that bandits would set upon us. Fear to the fleeing can be an all-consuming burden, and that fear is something I will never forget. Herod's reputation had always been fearsome, the self-proclaimed king of the Jews, who built up the temple and constructed an apparently vast palace in the hills at Masada, not to mention ruthless, the man who had his own wife put to death. If we valued life and our child, we had little choice but to heed the angel and flee, for our lives, for our future. It wasn't until we reached Egypt, across the border, that my fears started to ease. We were still far from being at peace though. We settled as best we could in a small corner of a ghetto town that was full of other people like us. One more displaced family was hardly even noticed. What was obvious to us though was that we were all outsiders, all on edge. So we quietly kept ourselves to ourselves and tried to avoid attracting any sort of unnecessary attention. The reach of Herod was never to be underestimated. Joseph and I certainly didn't have any family living this far away, and with no more visitations from angels, at times I felt so alone. People treated us kindly, but everyone there was essentially just surviving. I quickly learned that you can make do with just a small shelter to sleep in. Work of sorts can be found, and you can visit the market like all the other women. But as a refugee, it is almost impossible not to feel like an outsider. Barely a day went by when something didn't remind me that our little family was out of place. We simply didn't belong here, even in a community of friends. But as difficult as all that was, it was nothing compared to the pain that struck several months after we arrived. It had been an ordinary day filled with ordinary tasks. As the sun was dipping, Joseph and I visited the well. I recognised a man standing nearby. We had known him back in Bethlehem. He was a merchant who travelled regularly between Egypt and Yehuda. I was desperate for news from home, so I pointed him out to Joseph, and he hurried over to talk to the man. The sun was almost gone as I watched the conversation unfold. I was too far away to hear what they were saying, but I could tell it wasn't good news. Joseph's shoulders tensed and he looked back towards me anxiously. I waited in silence, wondering what he could be telling Joseph. There were all kinds of possibilities, but I feared every version included the same name, Herod. Joseph finally broke away and the merchant carried on his journey. Joseph looked ashen in a way I had never seen before. Herod's men came as we were warned to Bethlehem, he said, as we stood beside the dusty well. They went from house to house, swords drawn. They dragged out all the baby boys 2 years old and under. When they had found them all, they gathered them all up together in the street and made them sit in a huddle. They had to beat the mothers and the fathers to keep them away, and any boy that tried to run was kicked back into the group. When they were satisfied that there were no more male children hiding in the town, they grabbed each boy in turn by the hair and slit their throats, every single one. Mothers and fathers were screaming and the blood pooled in the streets. The soldiers did it in such a matter-of-fact manner, then mounted their horses and left. Not a single boy in Bethlehem was left alive. My voice, when I could find it through my heaving chest, was like a stranger to me. Surely some escaped. You tried to warn them, Yosef, I remember. Not one survived. I broke down on the desert ground and wept.